Good evening and welcome to another edition of The Exchange. I'm your host, Kayla Hodge. On this episode of The Exchange, we will be discussing the evolution of showbiz from the 90s until now. Being a 90s baby myself, I definitely remember those iconic 90s shows and the music that went along with it. But since then, how has the business changed? We sent our exchange reporters to a play this week featuring some legendary 90s figures such as Ann Nesby, lead singer of Sounds of Blackness, Tamika Scott from the group Exscape, and Carl Payne, the actor who played Cole on Martin. Let's take a look.
Advice that you would give to artists today on how to become successful?
Tell young people, they say we don't have money to do this, but you have to remember, if it's worth having a career, it's worth investing in yourself. Because if you don't invest in yourself, nobody else is going to invest in you. You really don't make any money until about your third project. To be honest, if you're being honest with yourself, you know this. But a lot of times I think artists make the mistake of getting that first hit and then spinning.
So everything is a lot different. It's easier now. Back then we had artist development where we were taught what to say in interviews, how to act, things that we could say, things that we can't say. That's why a lot of artists get in trouble nowadays, because they're very verbal about, I want to say opinionated. And sometimes being opinionated about the wrong subject can get you in trouble. So I feel like back then, artists were more trained better, more equipped for the industry than now.
So that's what you have to remember. If you're a young artist, invest in yourself, be faithful to your craft, get a team. This business is 80% business, 20% talent. There are people that can sing you under the bench at any church in this community. But if you are invested in yourself, dedicated to your craft, you have to understand that it's not all lights, action, camera. It's a hurry up and wait, and it's a work ethic. And first and foremost, pray and ask God for direction.
I would say first, whatever it is that you want to do, make sure you practice at it. You can't just say, I want to be a rapper, and you don't have no songs written, you don't know the logistics of the business. Learn the business, learn your craft, and be patient. And you have to be true to yourself. And you have to believe in yourself, because it took us, I want to say, before we got our deal, we went to so many people, and a lot of people were like, no, y'all don't have the look. You have the sound, but you don't have the look. Y'all don't have the style. Y'all don't have this. So we got a lot of no's, and if we would have just sat there and listened to that, we would have been discouraged. But we kept going until we got a yes. You might not get that yes that first time, but if you believe in yourself and you pray and you believe in God, you're going to get that yes eventually. So just believe in yourself and work hard at it. Be true to yourself, and you will be successful.
Okay, being a veteran R&B songstress, how would you describe the dynamics of the industry from the 90s to now?
Now we're in the 2000s, and it's a lot different back then. Back then, social media was not as vibrant as it is now, so we had to put in a lot of footwork. Like now, you can just get on your Twitter page, your Instagram page, your Facebook page. Like, look, we're going to be here in your city, and people are, they'll come out. But then we had to actually go to every place.
How would you describe the dynamics of media from the 90s to now?
We live in a society where social media pretty much drives everything now, I guess it's a new form of telling on yourself as well as spying on someone else. It's used as a form of validation when really it's not.
I've been doing comedy 20 years now, stand-up comedy. It's changed in a way, it's changed. So I believe laughter is a part of the structure in which God set everything up. So
we live in a world where likes or followers determines somebody's worth. So if something happened back when I was doing the Cosby Show and it became news, it either got exploited or it went away. Now, today, you're convicted on social media before anything ever, before the truth even comes out.
What advice would you give a young actor or actress who's trying to become famous or become successful at their craft?
Famous and successful at your craft are two different things. Anybody can become famous nowadays, right? I mean, again, through the social media aspect or just, doing a viral video, why you always lying? I mean, ridiculous. To aspiring actors and actresses out there, I would say stay true to the craft.
Always write your own material. Write your experience from your life. Build your act off what's ever going on in your life. Whatever relationship you have with your dad, your mom, your siblings, if you have children. I just like to write about everyday life experiences. You know what I mean?
I learned the business side of things because it's show business, and it's treat yourself as a brand because it's all about branding.
So I would just say, be a good writer first, and then you'll have a lot to talk about when you get on stage.
Invest in yourself. Invest in yourself too. The same way you would invest in any other business. Treat yourself as a company, as an entity, as a brand. And, since you do have the social media tools out there, use it. Use it to your advantage, but make sure you have the talent to back it.
So, and I know whenever you go somewhere, people always describe you as, oh, that's Cole from Martin. So how do you distinguish yourself from that role that you played in 1992 from 1997?
I mean, it's a blessing, that people recognize and that I was able to do something that people remember. It's always going to be that one thing that people remember you for. So.
Joining me on the couch this evening are exchange reporters who attended the play and interviewed the artist, Tyler Ullman and Kaylin Milbury. Welcome, ladies. Thank you. Now, how was it meeting these iconic stars and, talking to them and getting to meet with them?
Well, at first, before I went, I was so nervous because I'm like, oh my God, it's Cole from Martin and Tamika Scott from Exscape. But when I actually met them, they were really down to earth and they were easy to talk to.
I also think the knowledge that they gave was very great. You know what I mean? Like, they first-handedly experienced the whole business. So for them to give us that knowledge was really helpful.
And I know you ladies attended the play that they were in, The Lies They Told, which premiered at the Akron Civic Center on Saturday. How was that? And how was that watching those, artists from the 90s, which seems so long ago, today on the stage in 2015?
Well, the play, it was very interesting. And I think they were different characters than what I pictured them to be. So they know how to switch it up as far as it's acting.
I know for me personally speaking, I've been a fan of Martin for forever. So seeing Cole play a role that's not him being the dumb best friend, he was a lover in the play. So it was interesting to see him be more serious. Even though it's one of the most, it wasn't like a death situation, it was a matter of the heart, but it was still interesting to see how his roles changed.
Definitely. So that's a perfect segue into my next question. So as it pertains to the evolution of the business, did you see some evolution in the status of the character played by these artists? Like you said, you used to seeing Carl Payne play the goofy, dumb friend, silly, and you saw him, something serious. Well, we've never seen Tamika Scott act or be in any kind of show or anything like that. So seeing her in that completely different box and frame of work, what was that like? Was that hard to picture without her? I know she sang, but minus that, what was seeing her acting like?
To me, it just shows that she can broaden herself as an artist and step outside of the box and act other than just sing from what we know her to do.
And kind of like what Tyler said, that's all a part of the art world. Even though singing, painting, drawing, or just even performing, it's still an art. So I guess in my opinion, I think she was really able to relate to the character because just like her music, she sings love songs, so I guess for her, it was easier to relate back to that time of just singing those, tunes that we all know.
Right. And so when it comes to, the evolution of the showbiz, how have you guys seen the shows change in their message and in, their you know, as far as roles and everything like that changed from back when we were younger and to the shows that maybe, you know, people younger than us are watching today?
I think it's changed a lot. Just for instance, shows back in the 90s, people were able to say, I'm sorry. And it was, I'm sorry and I meant it, not I'm sorry. Like the type of things that you get from today's shows. So I think the messages back then were more surreal. You know, like these are the apologies, or these are the situations that would happen between you and your sister, or between you and your best friend. Whereas now it's just like with so much reality TV shows, it's more like that girl over there, instead of that's my friend, but we're just in an altercation at this time, you know?
Right. And then to me, the shows back then were more inspiring, like A Different World. It inspired Black students to go to attend HBCUs, and now it's really, you just tune in to TV and see who's going to fight next week. So, yeah.
So that platform, you know, that they had in the 90s, and, you know, that they could, you know, kind of get certain types of messages out there, or, you know, different types of styles. We know fashion, you know, plays a big role. Some of 90s fashion is coming back now with the baggy clothes and the backward stuff, and, you know, bright colors and all that type of stuff. You know, do you feel those things play a part in, you know, a lot of the media that we have today and the shows that we have today, as far as like shows like Degrassi that we watched in, you know, junior high or middle school, as compared to maybe Degrassi now, where there's all different types of characters, the scenarios are a little bit less realistic, and, you know, how do you guys look at that?
Well, me, I just think that they use the shows from the 90s and they put their own spin on them, so they make them different today. I guess they make them more relatable to the generation. So,
and I feel change is kind of inevitable. You know, from the 90s to the 2000s, we have cell phones, we have internet. I mean, even though they had those things back in the 90s, middle schoolers and high schoolers weren't walking around, and especially in public schools, with cell phones like, hey, text me. So even though the content changed as far as what they have, but the storyline is still the same. Even though there's still, some of it is missing, like the emotional part of it is missing, it's still there, but it's just, it's not up to par to the 90s shows.
And then going over what she said about the internet and social media, in today's age, it's easier to become famous because we can just upload videos to YouTube and become famous. But back then, you actually had to work hard to become successful in your craft. And now today, we can just go on Instagram and be like, hey, I got a new single on SoundCloud, go check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you feel as though that is being taken for granted now, this platform that was created from, you know, that new millennial standpoint to now are part of the situation?
Yeah, definitely, because we have more opportunities now. We don't have to work as hard and work hard to put ourselves out there now. We can just do it. It's just at the palm of our hands.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you ladies so much for coming on the couch today. We have to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back after this.
This is the moment I knew his future had no boundaries.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Get caught buzz driving, and you could use some hard time.
Craig, knock it off.
Sorry, Mom. It could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. And that could set you back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to The Exchange. Next up, we have our social media sidebar segment given by Marissa Nickel. Marissa?
Thank you, Kayla. This week we had a fun question for our viewers to answer. We asked, what do you remember most about the 90s? It seems like most people remember the TV shows from the 90s the most. User Steph Marie commented, I loved the Amanda Show. #throwback. I definitely agree. I know the Amanda Show was one of my personal favorites back in the day. Welcome to the girls' room. Another memorable show was brought up by user OG Keek. She commented, Rugrats. Just call me Susie. Rugrats was definitely a successful 90s show on Nickelodeon. I don't really remember the Rugrats all that well, but I do know that a baby's gotta do what a baby's gotta do. Instagram user 100 Days of K commented on another memorable part of the 90s, the music. She said all of the music that came out of that era. Without the 90s, we wouldn't have the alternative and indie rock that we do now. That's so true, Kayla. Iconic bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Weezer were definitely inspirations for the artists to come in the early 2000s. Instagram user Caressable commented the theme song for her favorite show, All That. She said, this was my show and you can Cabbage Patch to the theme song. All of these comments prove that the most memorable parts of the 90s set the tone for trends for the following decades. Well, that's all I have for this week's social media sidebar, but make sure to follow us on Instagram at theexchange.tv2, on Twitter at theexchangetv2, and check out our episodes on our YouTube channel, Exchanging Views. Back to you, Kayla.
Thanks, Marissa. Welcome to the Exchange Roundtable segment. This week on Roundtable, we have Professor Eugene Shelton, professor in the School of Journalism and Mass Communication here at Kent State. And we also have Dr. Keith Wisdom, who is executive producer of Cable 12. Welcome, gentlemen. How are we doing this evening?
Good evening, Kayla.
Good. So as it pertains to the 90s, how influential do you feel the media was at that time?
I think that the media is influential at all times. So I think it is there to show us, the audience, the listeners, what's happening in the world. And it responds to issues, events, personalities in such a way as to be, this is how we live today, this is what's happening, and through agenda setting and all those factors, they make decisions about what's important. Their take on politics, culture, the economy, things of that nature. But there's always a place, because that's what we do. The media informs us, entertains us, allows us to escape, and whether that's from film, television, books, newspapers, magazines, it's that impact. It's always there. I mean, having worked in the media, having worked in a job that my success depended on the media, it was very much a part of my life.
I agree totally with Professor Shelton, but I think looking back from now, when people watch this, and just my vantage point from this point here in 2015, I think in the 90s, if I were to write back on that, that was actually, I don't think the media's effect on our lives dropped or lessened. I think it was as strong and began to get stronger. It was setting itself, preparing itself for what happened years later, and bringing us to where we are now, to where the media is king. We look to it so much. You know, Professor Shelton said that we escape. We not only escape, I think now, we give ourselves to the media. We are wide open to everything it says and does. For many of us, it either dictates how we think or directs how we think. So I think the 90s, when we look back, we'll see it as a time of continued strengthening in its effect on our lives.
Definitely, I completely agree. So with that being said, the platforms that were created during the 90s in order to get these media messages out there on different types of shows, those people that worked on those shows, how do you feel they did in getting those media messages out there?
You have to understand, with the 90s, it was very different from today. You know, there are 500 television stations, stream, cable, satellite. In the 90s, it was primarily broadcast television, broadcast terrestrial radio stations. So the media platforms were very limited. So you're still looking at, more than likely, 3 major television networks. Cable has not found its place yet. And so everyone is looking at The Cosby Show. Everyone's looking at different shows from the 90s and listening to the same music, because that was a time of BET and MTV, and again, those were early stages of cable, but the platforms were not as frequent, and then it was more like mass communication. Today, I don't know if a such thing exists as mass communication, because it's all tailored to specific audiences.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming on. That's all the time we have for this week's roundtable, and we want to say thank you again for coming on the show. And this week, we took to the streets to see what you, our viewers, remember most about the 90s.
Our topic this week is 90s media.
Do you like 90s TV better or TV now?
I like TV now because I hate cartoons and I can't deal with the SpongeBob. It's I'm that guy, I'm sorry.
You go with TV now. I really do. I love Toonami, but TV now is just far more entertaining.
Of course, the 90s. It was raw. You can like beat someone and parents won't get mad.
What's your favorite 90s TV show, and do you know a quote from it?
Full House. And you got it, dude. Michelle.
I don't know, the Rugrats was a good one. Arthur. Gosh, there's so many. I can't even think of them all.
What was your favorite 90s song?
Could you do a little dance to it too, please?
I like Blue by Eiffel. Like.
Actually, heat in the moment. I don't know if it's a 90s song, but it's in my head.
I Get Around by Tupac.
In general, what's your favorite thing about the 90s decade?
92. I mean, the best people were born that year. You know, you were born in 92?
No, I wish now, though, because I'm not the best kind of person.
92 was a good year to be born.
Probably just everything was just, I feel like there were no problems. Like, maybe because I was like 2.5.
Hi, I'm Ann Nesby.
What's up? It's your girl, Tamika Scott from the group Exscape.
This is Bobo Lamb from HBO Bad Boys of Comedy.
My name is Kara Joy Reid.
Hi, my name is Carl Payne, and you're watching The Exchange on TV2.
And you're watching The Exchange on TV2.
You're watching The Exchange on TV2.
You're watching The Exchange at TV2.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it. You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. Got it. No.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early.
You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to The Exchange. Next up, we have our Lifting the Veil segment. And this week on The Veil, I want to break down the 90s. And this is meant for us, those 90s babies out there. This is Lifting the Veil. The 90s, where do I start? From the fashion to the music and the slang, the 90s had a huge impact on the millennial generation. In shows from Full House, Fresh Prince, and Family Matters, these iconic shows helped us get through some of those crazy growing pains. Not to say our parents weren't there to help us get through some of it, but seeing things like sibling rivalry and school problems and issues with liking the opposite sex, it shows like that helped us understand that everyone goes through these things and that you can get through anything as long as you have family. When it comes to the fashion, it was bold, it was bright, it was fun and expressive. Growing up in the 90s is when I learned that as long as you're confident about yourself and your style, you could start a trend. From the backwards clothes and girls in baggy boy clothes, it was a time of young, free expression. But perhaps the most influential part of the 90s was the music. From 90s groups such as Exscape SWV, In Vogue, TLC, and Destiny's Child. These songs are today the basis of behind lots of music in hip hop and R&B. It was all a time when the music was at its high, from the pop anthems such as Hip Hop Hooray, ho! We had lots of fun figuring out some of these things that were being said in some of these songs. Groups such as Naughty by Nature and Redman and Method Man used this time as a platform to talk about some major issues facing the generation at that time. With songs such as Fight the Power and things like that, it was a time of expression of police brutality, unfair and unjust laws in cities, and really serious things that were happening in this moment. And these are things that we're still facing today. It's very hard to understand now where some of these messages are coming from, but back then, these were hard-hitting topics for people. It was very small and thing to find lots of TV stations that were open and willing to show some of these messages on TV. So the little platform that was used as a moment to shine. And next up, we will have a rant rebuttal given by Colin Cunningham. Colin?
Hey guys, my name's Colin Cunningham, and I'm here to tell you about why the Confederate flag is stupid. It's a poopy symbol. It's bad. A lot of people make the argument that the Confederate flag represents some of the ideals that the United States was founded on. But we also have to remember that the United States was founded on selling and getting people addicted to harmful substances such as tobacco, as well as owning people. So it's really not a valid argument. Another argument that isn't valid that people make is heritage, not hate. You can't say that when your heritage is founded in hate. Your heritage is founded in imperialism, racism over an entire group of people. People just do not know what they're talking about when they argue about this issue. Additionally, the Confederate flag is just such an aesthetically unappealing design. It's like the American flag's weird cousin with cerebral palsy. Mostly like the people that own the Confederate flag. Another issue, the reason probably why the Confederate flag is such a touchy subject today is it's no longer being sold in Walmart, Amazon, Sears, or eBay. The fact that they don't sell it at Walmart is you can buy anything at Walmart. If you can't buy the Confederate flag at Walmart, you're pretty much out of the business. And the last time I went to Walmart, there were about as many Confederate flags there as there were teeth in people's mouths. I used to have a cousin who flew the Confederate flag off the back of his truck. I'm pretty sure he injected Pabst Blue Ribbon into his veins 3 times a day? I'm really not sure. I just don't see why people feel like they have to shove their ideals in people's faces when they're showing this symbol that so many people have a problem with. It represents racism. I don't see why you don't see that, but it does. And then there are people in northeastern Ohio, which wasn't even a Union state, by the way, flying this flag very often. I just don't see why people are for this. And maybe it'll be helpful if we vote for Bernie Sanders. I don't think anybody south of Virginia knows that Bernie Sanders is a presidential candidate and not a porn star. Thank you.
Now, we had a lot of great replies to my rant video that I did on the Confederate flag last week. Aiden Fry said, despite the fact that the viewpoints here is clearly liberal, and I generally disagree with liberal views, I agree with a lot of your points and I laugh at the jokes. I feel it should be mentioned, if you say the flag refers to the heritage of a nation that was built on slavery, the same could also be said about the Stars and Stripes. The USA and the CSA both grew up from the same beginnings. I appreciate the thoughtfulness and honesty in this comment. However, it is undeniable that the Confederate flag represents slavery more than the American flag, due simply to the fact that when war broke out among slave-owning states and states that opposed them, the Confederate flag was the one adopted by the states who opposed slavery. The Betty Blanco said, Colin, awesome job. I agree 100%. Can't wait to watch another one. Thanks for the comment and the positivity, Betty. I'm glad people are in agreement with my views, and I hope I can change people's minds about the flag. I also received a couple of joking comments on Facebook. Chris Lippold said, the Confederate flag is a symbol of hope for idiots everywhere. This is highly offensive. Well, I agree that many people who support the Confederate and fly the flag may not have the best educational background. Resorting to an ad hominem attack on a person isn't the way to make an argument. Eric Schultz said, so confused, isn't Bernie Sanders the KFC guy? Yet again a joke comment, but even as a Bernie supporter, I think Eric might be right. And that's all for my rant rebuttal. Coming up next is our performance by Kayla Collins after the break.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice. And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
This new dad is picturing a tree house in the sky, but he's ignoring the instructions. Good luck, big guy. His kids know that he's building without a clue. Never been so good with nails and glue. Now we're trapped inside a box. I hope mom knows what to do. Mom! See, you don't have to be perfect to be the perfect parent.
Thousands of siblings in foster care will take you just as you are.
Welcome back to The Exchange. Well, that's it for this episode. I want to leave you with these thoughts. Media through all generations is influential. Whether it's the 90s, the 2000s, or even in the future, media is always going to be needed. But let's take the time to remember back on why we have these platforms and how we can use them even better. For how media has changed from then until now has created a lot more platforms in order for us to do things like TV too. The 90s have been a special part of the media for a while, and we love it. So make sure to follow us on our social media pages at The Exchange TV2 on Twitter and on Instagram at theexchange.tv2, and to catch an extended version of our interviews with the artists as well as this episode and past episodes, subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Exchanging Views. That's all we have for tonight. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful evening.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
This new mom is struggling to get the skates just right. And now she's holding on for dear life. Her kids can see she may have broke her knees. They still love her though she looks like she's attacked by killer bees. I'm allergic. Proof you don't have to be perfect to be the perfect parent.
Thousands of siblings in foster care will take you just as you are.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're going to beat them and bust them. Beat them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad
One more
today.
time. Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys.